We have a tendency to make fishing a lot tougher than what it actually is. Oh, God, that was my fault. Today's gonna be a little different day. I'm just gonna go fishing. God, that was my fault. I'm Greg Hackney. We're on Toledo Bend. I got 7 hours to figure out if I can catch them or not. So just stay tuned. We're gonna catch them.
Go one more time.
Now, am I gonna have to say, you know I can't say that again. I don't know what I'm gonna say now because I shot that off the cuff, man.
It's a challenge for any angler to catch fish on water they've never seen before. And when they fail, they think, well, they just weren't biting today, or maybe I'm not a good angler. I wonder how one of those bass pros would have done it. Well, what would happen if we took one of those big-time pros, put him on water he's unfamiliar with, gave him a day to figure it out, just like you and I have to do. And then we follow him on a day on the lake.
Day on the Lake is presented by Quantum Rods and Reels, fishing at a quantum level. By Progressive Boat Insurance. Visit progressive.com today.
Well, last week, you could throw a rock from one end to the other of our Day on the Lake location. This week, we're in Louisiana on Toledo Bend Reservoir, and you might need an airplane to fly end to end. Toledo Bend is actually on the Louisiana-Texas border, and it is hard to figure out because of its size.
We have a tendency to make fishing a lot tougher than what it actually is, and I like to start off with fishing what looks good to me, you know, the cover. There's boat docks, of course there's standing timber, a little bit of vegetation, and I fish what looks good. I'm a cover-oriented fisherman, so I just have to get out here and, you know, and experiment until I find out what they're doing.
Now, Greg lives in Louisiana but has little experience on these waters.
The biggest thing in a deal like this is keep it simple. There will be a simple way to catch them. And when I say simple, I mean it won't be some type of new technique. It'll be, you know, throwing a lipless crankbait, throwing a spinnerbait. The whole deal will be deciding what type of cover they're on. Once you figure that out, then you can just run around in the creek and fish that cover, you know, and catch them. So the main deal today will just be figuring out how to get that first bite. And once I figure that out, you know, then I should be able to, you know, to catch them, you know, easier anyway.
Now, we hear this from every elite bass pro. Figure out one fish, then repeat what you did to catch that one fish, and you have a pattern going. Greg Hackney has started about mid-lake in the Pendleton Bridge area of 80-mile-long Toledo Bend. He launched at Salter's Landing on the Louisiana side.
There's a front blowing through today, which is actually ideal conditions. The wind's blowing, the fish ought to be really feeding up. You know, I'm probably gonna start pretty shallow and then move out from there. This will just kind of give me an idea. I'll go ahead and make a little light pass on some of this little flat stuff in here, and it'll give me an idea if these fish are in the backs of the creeks. The only thing that kind of bothers me about the whole deal, I'm not seeing any birds.
Another standard elite angler practice that we don't hear a lot about. These guys always have their eyes open for birds and other wildlife action. Well, think about it. Birds feed on the same things that bass chase, bait fish. The big difference is that we can see what the birds are up to. This guy is on the move, which probably tells Greg Hackney a lot. Well, nothing is going on so far, but we're just getting started. Under 100 casts, first part of the day, and at the time it looks like a heavy jig around boat docks is the plan of attack. At 10 o'clock, the technique is still the same, but we've moved out away from the docks and into some standing timber. Slow start here on Day on the Lake, and Greg has moved from Cane Creek, where he started, to the main lake. A little motoring, but he's still on the lookout for the right cover. Now, we've seen this happen before. To us, the angler seems to have nothing going on when, in fact, he sees it as eliminating unproductive places. However, Greg Hackney, he is starting to get pretty serious. He's watching his hours slip away with very few results. You have to remember, though, this is one of the best anglers out there. He will get on track. Right now, he's working thick grass 10 to 12 feet deep.
The main deal today will just be figuring out how to get that first bite. And once I figure that out, then I should be able to, to catch them, easier anyway. I believe I'm gonna catch them now that I got that bite.
First bite of the day. Are we finally on our way after a tough first half? Well, stay with us because we're still counting on Greg Hackney.
Oh, God, that was my fault.
Welcome back to Day on the Lake, which takes us to Louisiana today and Toledo Bend Reservoir. And here is the perfect body of water to show the challenges of catching bass. Lots of water, lots of different structure, and a lot of options. Which one should I go with? Well, our bass pro, Greg Hackney, has been humbled to begin our adventure, but he certainly has the right credentials. The Arkansas native who seems like he's been a threat to win just about every tournament forever, but incredibly, Greg has only finished his 4th full year with the Bassmasters, but man, has he gotten a lot done. 3 wins, 26 top 10s, and most impressive of all, less than $70,000 away from the $1 million mark in winnings. But Greg has not boated a fish yet on this day, and this was his approach to begin with.
We have a tendency to make fishing a lot tougher than what it actually is, and I like to start off with fishing what looks good to me, the cover. There's boat docks, of course there's standing timber, a little bit of vegetation. The main deal today will just be figuring out how to get that first bite. I just have to get out here, and experiment until I find out what they're doing.
And what they're doing is still what Greg is struggling with. He pitched a jig around boat docks to begin the day in Cane Creek, and nothing. Then he moved to standing timber with the same results. Now the timber was in 10 feet of water, and he moved closer to the main lake and shallower, about 5 feet in milfoil grass, and at 12:10, and after 370 casts, Greg had one bite. A little panic was starting to set in at that point.
Dang. I believe I'm gonna catch them now that I got that bite. I've been fishing too long and I don't have enough time left. It's been kind of slow this morning, but fishing this way, it's kind of the way it is. It's feast or famine. I go a long time without a bite, but I feel like when I hit a school, I'll be able to catch 2 or 3 pretty quick. And so, on a lake that's got quality fish in it like this one, I'd just rather fish for the, the quality and not the quantity. I'd rather get, fish all day for 5 good bites than to, fish all day for a lot of bites. See, when you get up here, you can see this is milfoil. There's very little hydrilla in this. There's a little bit of hydrilla mix, but predominantly this is milfoil. And I'm always looking for that grass change. When I'm fishing straight hydrilla, I like, find a clump of milfoil in it or some coontail, just something else to mix it up. Those fish always seem to look for something different in that grass that is the reason they're on a certain piece of grass. But I'm always looking for a high spot, a place where I can see that grass because it's different. It's almost like the grass is the same height and then there'll be one clump up, and a lot of times that's the key. Oh, God, that was my fault. I hopped that jig up when he got it. One thing it does gives me confidence. I know now that I can catch them this way. Now that I pulled up and got a few bites. At first when you start doing something and you haven't been bit on it, you're like, well, I think this is what I ought to be doing, but until you get that first bite, and then now I know, I'm like, if I get around them, they're gonna bite. See some right up there, but finally catch me one anyway. I was like, there's no, I was looking on that depth finder, I was like, there's no grass, and I picked up, I was like, well, there's some grass, and he got it. And he was shallow, that grass was about 8 foot.
On the Bassmaster circuit, Greg Hackney is generally thought of as one of the better jig fishermen. He's using an 1.25 ounce jig and a Strike King Rage chunk, and has finally put a bass in the boat.
Another thing it tells me if I need to be, cranking or throwing a spinnerbait or something, if those fish are suspended in that grass and not on the bottom, they'll catch that jig fall. And, so far all my bites, every bite I've had has been, on the bottom or down close, right on the bottom. And if they ever pull up in that grass, and I get me a bite up high in the water column, then I'll know, I need to be fishing up. I watch that line every time to make sure it don't get punched on the way down, and it seems like all of them bite me just the instant I go to lift up, They're either close to the bottom and chased it down, or, they're sitting there and the instant it moves, none of them have actually been on there as I picked up. Just the instant as the bait moves, they get it.
Now the Hackney that we all know and love is on track, and even though it took him a half a day to get there, he still has time to show out. Hey, you don't want to miss this afternoon. Day on the lake has showed up twice on Toledo Bend Reservoir, which is claimed by both Louisiana and Texas over the past several weeks. And both Bassmaster elite anglers who led us did the same thing. They picked out a small area of this 80-mile-long lake and stayed there till they figured it out.
I'm a cover-oriented fisherman, so I just have to get out here, and experiment until I find out what they're doing.
Well, Greg Hackney experimented till morning became mid-morning, and mid-morning became noon, and after that, he fished boat docks, he fished standing timber, grass, and finally caught his first fish at 10 minutes after 12, having made over 450 casts. You must remember, though, those aren't wasted casts for a good bass fisherman. They're eliminating possibilities and preparing for the right hour.
Regardless of how this turns out, if I was here fishing a tournament, this time of the year, I'd spend all 3 days of my practice fishing like this. Because this is just the time of the year, and especially with the weather like this and this front pass, and this would get better every day, that you can get on these, these huge areas of grass, and you just have to get out there and find those schools. But these fish are on milfoil. They're not on that hydrilla. That's just a band of milfoil down through there. That might be the whole deal. They're using that that's a little shallower than I was fishing at about 14, and those fish are about 7 or 8. That milfoil doesn't go quite as deep as that hydrilla.
Well, Greg has caught 2 fish and lost 2 fish in the last 60 minutes. They've all been in milfoil 6 to 8 feet deep. And as we watch Greg continue the search, let it be said that he has been very successful in a short amount of time developing his career as a professional bass fisherman. Also, it's interesting that he gives b.a.s.s, celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, a lot of the credit.
Probably the biggest memory I have, they had the Bassmasters Classic in Pine Bluff in '84, and I was 11. And watching Clun, win the Classic. I think that's what really probably jump-started my fishing career, because that's the first time I'd ever realized that you could fish for a living, mean, I think the top prize in was $40,000, and I was like, man, he won $40,000 fishing. You know, it was unbelievable. And you know, and then the funny thing about that is, I mean, now I'm one of his competitors. However, 20 years later, whatever, you know, 23 years later, I guess. That's what's wild, and he's still competing.
Well, Greg is still young, and we expect to hear lots from him over the years. A look at his path below Pendleton Bridge shows most of his day spent in Cane Creek and just outside of it in the main lake. By the way, Greg has used a bait casting reel all day, a Quantum PT burner, and a 7-foot, 11-inch Quantum Signature Series rod. It's 3:30 now, and Greg Hackney continues to pound that grass.
What I tell you, I knew it was, I could just tell, you know, I got that feeling, and I was like, it's getting right. Same deal, you know, I might have screwed up. I was just spending too much time fishing too deep. Because all my bites now have come, you know, around 6, 7 foot, 8 foot at the most.
One thing to point out here as Greg's day is getting close to wrapping up. As tough as it's been, he stayed in the wind for all of his day. I think he would repeat that maneuver if he had it all to do over. But what might he change if he had the chance? We'll get that answer with Progressive's Keys to Success, and that's just ahead.
Day on the Lake is presented by Quantum Rods and Reels, fishing at a quantum level. And by AT&T, your world delivered. Keys to Success is presented by Progressive Boat Insurance. Visit progressive.com today.
I haven't done that well today, but I really wouldn't have changed the way I fished. If I had to go back and do it over again, I would have changed areas. You know, I didn't pick the right area, but you know, not being here and not really knowing, you know, I took a chance on this area because it was big and it offered a lot of different things. You know, it had a deep side with a creek channel, big grass flat, stumps, big creek. You know, normally, you know, in a day's time, an area this big, you know, it's a good chance to find a good water fish. Finally catch me one anyway. I was like, there's no, you know, I was looking on that depth finder, I was like, there's no grass, and I picked up, I was like, well, there's some grass, and he got it. I probably, looking back on it, I probably should have fished a little more main lake. So I started and then went in, and pretty well seemed like I completely ran out of fish. With the way the wind blew today, it was really hard fishing. You know, I tried out on some big flats right in the mouth of this creek, and just, you know, it was hard to fish. I didn't feel like I was fishing very efficient out there. And so I was in the grass, outside the grass, in the grass. I never could really get on the edge and fish it, you know, very thorough either, and that didn't help. But as far as the way I fished, I pretty well felt like I had to fish this way here, you know, to catch better fish with the weather like it was. You know, had it been cloudy or something, I probably could have, you know, fished a little different, but I feel like the biggest thing was I just probably never got in the right area. And that's the way this kind of fishing is. I fished miles of grass before, you know, and spend 2 or 3 days, you know, just doing this and only find 2 or 3 groups of fish, you know, and find like 1 group a day. I mean, that's kind of the way this fishing goes. But because I kept thinking I hit the right stretch, I'd pop me 4 or 5 of them big ones. What I tell you. Other than that, I don't feel too bad about it. I've actually fished pretty well today. You know, I don't really have a problem with the way I fished. I just don't feel like I ever got in the right area.
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. To become a better angler, log on to ESPNOutdoors.com.
Oh, God, that was my fault. I hopped it.